When the clocks of Wall Street stopped ticking, America stopped breathing. In 1929, fortunes vanished overnight. Millionaires became beggars, banks collapsed, and breadlines stretched for miles. Families lost homes, hope, and faith in the American dream. This was not just an economic crisis. It was a decade of survival, the Great Depression. When America stood still, the morning of October 29, 1929, began like any other in New York City. The sun glimmered over Wall Street, and the noise of traders echoed through the canyon of skyscrapers. Among the crowd stood Thomas Miller, a young stockbroker who had tasted wealth too soon. Just a week ago, he was dreaming of buying a mansion and a new Ford automobile, but as he looked at the numbers flashing on the ticker that day, he felt the world collapsing. The market wasn't just falling, it was crashing. Within hours, fortunes disappeared. Thomas watched men once proud and powerful drop their heads into their hands. By noon, the floor was filled with torn paper, panic, and silence. That day would be remembered forever as Black Tuesday. The crash spread like wildfire across the nation. In Chicago, Detroit, and St. Louis, banks that had held people's life savings shut their doors without warning. Farmers in Kansas stared at their dry fields, praying for rain that never came. In small towns, people lined up outside banks hoping to withdraw the little they had left, but the tellers had nothing to give. Mary Thompson, a widowed mother of 3, stood in one such line. Her husband had died in the war, and now the savings he left behind were gone. She clutched her children's hands tightly, whispering that everything would be all right, though she herself no longer believed it. By 1931, America had changed beyond recognition. Once bustling factories stood silent. Steel plants cooled, car production stopped, and men wandered the streets searching for work that didn't exist. Nearly 15 million Americans were unemployed. Cities began to fill with Hoovervilles, makeshift camps made of cardboard and scrap wood named bitterly after President Herbert Hoover, who many blamed for the crisis. Nights were long and cold. Fires burned in barrels as men huddled around them, sharing stories of better times. Hunger wasn't just an emotion anymore, it was part of everyday life. Meanwhile, in the Dust Bowl of the Midwest, another disaster unfolded. Jack Reynolds, a farmer from Oklahoma, watched as his crops turned to dust. Years of over-farming and drought had turned fertile land into barren wastelands. Storms of sand rolled across the plains, covering everything in choking darkness. Jack's wife, Eleanor, packed what little they owned into an old truck. With their 2 children in tow, they began a long, desperate journey west, to California, chasing the dream of work and survival. They weren't alone. Thousands like them, called Akis, made the same journey, filling the highways with broken vehicles and broken dreams. In cities like New York, breadlines stretched for blocks. Charitable kitchens run by churches handed out thin soup and stale bread to hundreds each day. Thomas, once a wealthy broker, now stood among them, his suit faded and torn. Across the counter he saw Mary, the same woman who had once been his client. Their eyes met, both carrying the same story of loss. There were no rich or poor anymore, just survivors. Amid the despair, a new kind of spirit began to rise. Franklin D. Roosevelt, elected in 1932, stepped into the White House with a promise. A new deal for the American people. His voice on the radio brought a glimmer of hope to millions. The only thing we have to fear, he said, is fear itself. Through public projects, government aid, and jobs programs, Roosevelt began to rebuild what had been lost. Men were put to work building bridges, roads, and dams. Artists and writers found government-sponsored jobs that kept culture alive. Slowly, life began to move again.